Go all the way next, you get to sit next to the edge.
Wow, look at all these nice buildings.
On your left here is supposed to look like the area along the Seine River in Paris, as Daniel Burnham thought of Chicago as Paris on the prairie. The balustrades up on top reference Place de la Concorde, and that's Upper and Lower Wacker Drive. Continuing on your left, we have our Gothic rocket or telescope. That's Mather Tower by Herbert Hugh Riddle, 1928. The white terracotta facade is meant to reference the white terracotta on the Wrigley Building, and the room up on top there is only 9.5 feet wide. So think about whether you'd feel like royalty or a prisoner if you were up there. The next building I'm going to talk about on your left looks like it has a green hairnet on today. That's the Jewelers Building by Frederick Dinkelberg and Giovert. Frederick Dinkelberg is more well known for the Flatiron Building in New York. When that was completed in the late 1920s, jewelers used to bring their inventory home with them at night in their pockets. So they designed the building in such a way they could drive their car right onto an elevator up to the floor where their office was. However, as crime moved off the streets and into the offices, they took out the elevator, and today Helmut Jahn, a German-born architect of international renown, has his offices on the 3rd floor, and he uses that room up on top called Belvedere for client meetings when it's not undergoing facade work. The next room of the Riverwalk is called the Marina because it's across from Marina City. And up from that we see a building with stainless steel mullions in the windows, sometimes called the Man in the Gray Plaid Suit. That's the Leo Burnett Building by Kevin Roche and John Dinkeloo, 1989. Kevin Roche came here from Ireland to study at IIT, the Illinois Institute of Technology. And he said he was very impressed by Carl Sandburg's poem, Chicago, the City of Big Shoulders. He wanted to design a building that would stand up to the street wall. So this is based on the idea of a Greek column, 3 distinct parts, base, shaft, and capital. In addition, about a third of the way up, or at hip length, there are subordinated cornices or notches that acknowledge its neighbor, 55 West Wacker. That's that putty-colored building that looks like a cat scratched its paw down the concrete. That was designed by C.F. Murphy and Associates in the mid-1960s, originally for Blue Cross Blue Shield, and it's an example of what's called brutalism, or raw concrete. More than holds its own with its 2 hefty neighbors. Its other neighbor is sometimes called the Parthenon on a stick, or the Building of Mirrors. That was designed by the Spanish architect Ricardo Bofill in association with DeStefano and Partners, 1992. And Ricardo Bofill has been quoted as saying, architecture should be fun. It should be like theater. So you'd normally see a pediment, that triangle shape, over the entrance to a Greek temple or the Art Institute. He puts it on the top of the building, and not just on one side, but on 4 sides. It then looks like he's pasted the columns on. They're not really structural. This is the second new room that opened up this summer. This is called the Cove. It's got dune-like plantings. Now the river is known to flood, and within 1 week of opening this, the river was up to the first step of the restaurant. But that's part of the plan. All they do is hose it down. And that's supposed to look like stones along the beach. You get beer here, and the other one's more formal with the high back seats, and you get wine over there. And the next building on your left here looks like a surgeon made some cuts in the front. This was supposed to be the future home of the Shangri-La Hotel. They got up to the first cut done. The economy tanked in 2008. The developer lost control of the project. It stayed empty for several years, taken over by a new developer who turned it into luxury rental residences. So Gary Handel is the architect on this. And there are high ceilings up to the first cut, because it was going to be a hotel, and then lower ceilings up above. The third room that opened up this summer, this is called the theater. And the idea is you sit on the steps and watch the theater of the river, or we could watch the theater of them walking by. We learned a new architectural term for this called stramp. Stairway plus ramp. You may notice there's stairs and then there's a ramp that goes up sideways. They light that up at night. Up from that, with the flag over the door, we have the LaSalle Wacker Tower, 1930, Halliburton Root, classic Chicago Art Deco. Art Deco in Chicago responded to the 1923 building code. We didn't want to end up with what you see in New York, sometimes the canyon approach, where the buildings come up so close to the edge of the street you don't know what the weather's like. So we said you can go up past 260 feet with a quarter of your plot as long as you have setbacks for light and air. Remember, there was no air conditioning, no fluorescent lighting. Because our plots are square, you often get armchair shape for Chicago Art Deco. In New York, the plots are rectangular. Their Art Deco looks more like a wedding cake or a waterfall. Now, these 3 new rooms will open up next June. They're backfilling in 25 feet.
So many
The
bricks.
next building on your left is really 2 buildings in one. The Builders Building, the part closest to us, Graham Anderson, Probst & White, the early 1900s, was shaped like a square donut with an atrium in the middle to get light and air in the middle. But as time went on, it was not really economically or financially efficient, and they were going to tear that down until Skidmore, Owings, Merrill came up with a plan to put on an addition, unite the 2 buildings with a 4-story glass mansard roof, and then it made financial or economic sense to leave the facade on the original in much the same shape as what you can see. You can see the addition's not identical, but complementary, also tripartite design. We're having a lot of facade work done on the front of some of these buildings here, you can see. The next building I'm going to talk about looks like it has oil cans up on top. It's on your left. It's one of 3 in a row by the New York firm Kohn Pedersen Fox. Designed over a 15-year period for 3 different clients, rather an unusual fact pattern. Now, this part of the Riverwalk, they're going to backfill out 50 feet. We had to get permission from the federal government from this because it's a federal throughway. 225 horse whacker with the oil cans up on top there is postmodern design. That likes to have a bit of historic reference. So those oil can motifs are referencing the water towers on the older buildings like the Jewelers Building we saw moments ago. The bridge in between them is contextual, tells us we're on the river. Underneath that is an urn that references Frank Lloyd Wright's Prairie Style. Over the door, a porthole. It's really an air intake grill. Ties in nicely to its neighbor, which also has those air intake grills at the base. Its neighbor with the alternating bands of green glass was voted the most popular modern building by the residents of Chicago. 333 Michigan, shaped like a Japanese fan. Square along the street side, mimicking the street grid, curved along the river. It kind of looks like a knife cutting through butter up on top. The offices are behind the alternating bands of green glass, and at the base you'll notice there's granite. And that's because when this was completed in the mid-1980s, the elevated train went right past the other side of that building. It still does. The developer knew he'd never be able to rent out the space, so the architect designed it with the mechanicals down below. They covered that all up with granite. But by the time they got to the 3rd building on your left, sometimes called the Lantern Building, it's got white glass on top and then blue. This is the early 2000s. We had better acoustical glass. So the architects ran the glass all the way down the facade past the train tracks. That's 191 Wacker, located on a historically significant site. We'll discuss that a little bit further when we get back from the South Branch.
Here it is.
Next to that is a residential building, River Bend, Stefano and Partners, 2002. The townhouses on the bottom went for about $2.1 million. That does not include parking. Parking is in the middle where the frosted glass is. That building is so skinny you have to put your car on an elevator to get it into the parking, and there are condominiums up on top. $1 billion views out this side, at least for now, 25-cent views out the back. So what the architect did was design single loaded units. There's a glass hallway on the back. Light comes into your unit via a transom window. And this is what the mayor and the government would like for the Riverwalk, all the way up to the northern suburbs, down to the southern suburbs. This pink or salmon color building on your left is the oldest building we'll see. Fulton House, formerly North American Cold Storage Warehouse, Abbott, 1898. The addition on the other side, 1908. Harry Weiss was visiting his daughter in a converted warehouse in New York, and he said, we've got to get this kind of thing going in Chicago. So he took this on as his first project, and he may have bit off more than he could chew. It took him 18 months to defrost the place. He removed 500 truckloads of horsehair, cork, and brine. He punched through 4-foot walls. Look at those balconies. You can see how thick it is. Behind those stars are metal reinforcing rods. When he was done, he ended up with a mixed commercial and residential use property, which is undergoing a bit of facade work. He put in a marina. That all gives him enough confidence for this next project, shaped like a triangle or a sail on the side. We often call Harry Weiss Mr. Triangle. River Cottages, there are 4. This is 1988. The first one went on sale about 2 weeks ago for $2.3 million, and it sold like that. It's under contract for more than asking. 2 units, each pair share a dock and an elevator, outside living space on every unit. But if you bought in there in the 1980s, nobody was thinking about living on the river. If you went out on your balcony, you'd have to hold your nose. There were all sorts of putrid odors, junk floating down the river. Harry Weiss thought we would eventually come to our senses and realize it would be worth the cost and effort necessary to clean up the river. He was just a little ahead of the education curve on that. On your right, a different type of commercial enterprise. Over 10,000 residents with cash to spare come here. They use the running tracks, the weight machines, the aerobics classes they attend, and out come beautiful people. While Barack Obama, Oprah Winfrey, Michael Jordan, Jim Belushi, Rahm Emanuel, they all work out here or have worked out here. This is the East Bank Club, Ezra Gordon and Jack Levin. We're not going to see anybody working out. It originally only had one level of transom windows. The second level was added later. The Riverwalk is likewise a voluntary effort on their part. But this was very important in spurring development in the River North area. As people came here to work out, especially artists, they saw all these deserted warehouses with the high ceiling. Straight ahead with the spire up on top, Trump Tower, second tallest building in Chicago. It was supposed to be the tallest building in North America. The first planning meeting was the day after 9/11, and Donald Trump knew he was not going to get the financing for the tallest building in North America. He's all about making money, so he did not see the point in putting the spire on because it was going to count toward the height of the building. Mayor Daley II had seen a model of the building with the spire, and he liked the way it looked. So the whole time this was being built, there was a little disagreement going on between the two of them, and it was unclear what the top was going to